Nice. We're live here, Universal Awakening Group. It's been a minute or two, or three. It's been a while. It's basically what I'm getting at. And I had promised Mr. Matthew, the creator of this group, that I would get going on some lives once again. And so now we're here, joining all of you. So say hello if you're here. It's always nice to see who's connected. That's why I like Zoom these days, because I can kind of see who's present, see physical faces, but just a hello or a message is also nice. As I mentioned, it's been a little while, but I promised Matt I would do some lives once again, and I've been truly rested in the bliss of the heart and the bliss of peace in these times, and so I haven't been as called to be in the teaching mode, though it does come in rhythms. And for those who know the human design system, which I've talked about often, also in this group, and maybe you can go online and get your chart somewhere, but human design is a really accurate system in bringing clarity to our individual expression, our unique expression. And for me, it's a lot of rhythms. So that's all I'll say about that. But hello to everyone who's here. My name is Corey Sheik. It's been a while since I've shared in this way in this group. But I'm one of the, I guess, teachers that Matt had called upon to be sharing more regularly in this group, to bring some presence and joy and peacefulness on a mass scale. This group passed almost 100,000 members, so gratitude to all of you for participating and being in this space together. It's something special about co-creating energy through our presence and through our attention, and this is in essence really what I wanted to get into today. But before I do, say hello. Hey Kathy, Kim, Tasneem. Can't see everybody, but it's nice to see who is present and alive and well in these times of transition, we could say. But the topic I wanted to dive into, and of course, we're always in the presence of the moment, so if there are questions or comments or topics you'd like me to dive into, I usually don't need much. Just a word or a statement would be enough, and I could really traverse that energy. But in this moment, I felt called to speak on the topic of attention being our currency. I was in a discussion recently with a council of New Earth leaders as an academy that I teach for. And we were in a council discussion amongst other leaders around the planet, and we were sharing what was present, what was alive for us. And one of the women in this group was in Bali, and she was sharing the topic and a certain clarity of transmission on the perspective of currency and money, and how much of our perspective of money and abundance and the essence of the entirety of our experience of life is the subject and the object, and money many times being the peak of the objects in which we perceive. It is at the peak of the illusionary hierarchy that we've come to know on this planet. And so with money holding so much energy, we have to understand, well, where's that coming from? And when we look at any technology, and especially in a time where we're facing the breaking point between the organic structure of ourselves and our angelic nature and the movement into potential transhumanism timelines and the becoming lost within the technological synthetic creation. Technology has always been just a reflection of this human body. Everything we create within technology is a reflection of this body. It is made in the image of this body, just like we are made in the image of God Source. The nature of technology is made in the image of this body. It's made in the image of this angelic form, this angelic creation, as we are angelic humans. And so when we come to recognize the highest of all these technologies, at least in the hierarchical view of the illusionary reality we have come to know as this planet, this earth, this system we live within and we perceive, money being at the peak of that, well, money is a technology. And so we have to come to grasp as to what is this technology? And why does it hold so much energy? And what is it truly made in the image of? And at a fundamental level, when we rewind everything and we come back to how money flows and how money exchanges and where money is valued and not valued, and how the economy moves, we really recognize that this money is simply a movement of energy, and particularly it's a movement of attention. The entirety of our understanding of money and the movement of the value of money is simply a perception of attention. It is, where is attention being placed? And so when we come back to the perspective that we are, in these forms, a cut-off version from our angelic lineage, our true angelic potential, and a race line that has existed here for a very long time, well, we have been distracted from the truth of the power of our attention and the power of the true currency, which is our attention and awareness itself, the loving awareness of God's source, in which moves through this individuated form. This is the true currency. So where we place our attention naturally is where we are giving our energy. It is where we are giving the most sacred aspect of ourselves to. We are moving our currency, our energy, in the direction of where we're placing our attention. So let's rewind. Let's come back to that and rest in that for a moment. Where we are placing our attention is ultimately where we are flowing our sacred currency, our energy, the expression of our loving awareness and source. So let's put a like down, comment, share this video, and just sink into that and the power of that, because this message is important, especially where we are seeing heightened intensities of movements of attention, especially through social media, where we can be spending times discussing topics like this, exploring the topics of this nature, or the endless other topics that are potentially available, and we don't need to go too far outside of just the news feed to find the endless things that are being discussed at this time. And we have to really come to grips with the responsibility that we are in governance through the free will co-creative ability that we have to move our attention in the direction of that in which is of the highest service, that in which is of the most value in our heart, what resonates at the most fundamental, essential level. And so along the path, naturally we are, whether spiritual, not spiritual, all of that is just, labels, just the simple movements of ourselves through the journey of this human life. We are moving our attention among many different objects of attention. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, which make up the entirety of our experience. There is an infinite plethora of these objects of attention in which our attention is moved to. And naturally, the journey of awakening is awakening to the free will choice in which one has to move their attention upon the higher and higher, the inner and inner, the true aspect of reality, which is the manifestation of God's source in form, the movement of loving awareness in form. And so through the path of awakening, where one begins to practice the conscious methods of meditation and concentration and breath work and embodiment practices of purification and moving into the darkness, moving into the depth of one's body and the traumas and all that is held, which is what we're doing here in a sense, just guiding into presence, what I do often in one-on-ones almost every day with people all over the world, and what each of you are doing each and every moment, because reality, the external reality we have come to know, is just a holographic projection of what is in our subconscious. It is revealing itself moment to moment in our reality to then be integrated back. And the integration comes back through the gates of loving awareness. That's how it enters. To enter the kingdom, it must enter through the kingdom of loving awareness. This is how we integrate back the false aspects of what we see, what we deem and see to be misaligned or unrighteous. And so anyone who has been walking this path has naturally seen this in their individual life, of things coming to the surface that are to be integrated. And now, in ever so present forms, we are finding ourselves in collective purification and integration periods, where all of what is now being perceived is integrating back within through the heart of hearts. And so as we walk the path of awakening, we come through all these modalities and systems and tools, and we're constantly brought back to this loving attention, this loving awareness, in which is constant and unchanging, even within the plethora of changing realities, endless changing realities, opinions, ideas, dogmas, threats, fears, desires, etc. So then, naturally, we come to places ongoingly on the path where we recognize, well, what is the true value of placing my attention upon this specific object? When in essence, every time I silence the movement of attention upon objects, meaning thoughts, feelings, sensations, all of the above, and instead place the attention upon that in which is perceiving these objects, the essential loving awareness in which is looking outward and perceiving and in essence giving life to everything in which arises, because everything in which arises is made of the same source, no matter how it's appearing to the limited mind. And so this is the practice. We come to recognize what is the source of our perception, the source of our attention, the source of our currency. Remember, this is the topic of today, attention being the currency. So we come to source back and see what is the source of currency and the movement of our currency being our attention. And can we, for at least a moment or two, we can do this even just in this moment, coming to the heart, reverberate, return back into, rest in the source of loving awareness, in which gives life to all of the potentials, all of the fears, all of the desires, all of the objects of our movements in this human form. So we can just come to rest in that for a moment. It's that sense of being, that sense of knowing that I exist, I am here, I am now, I am aware, I am attentive. This is ultimately where we begin and where we end. So we can share maybe how that feels when we hear this, when we experience this. If you haven't said hello already, say hello. But the simple message has been clear. Our attention is our currency. It is the highest source of our loving joy, of our abundance, of our expression, of our creative force. It is what moves everything in our experience. It is what continues to co-create with God's source within our individual human life. Never-ending unfolding reality. So where we place our attention is where the energy or the currency is moving. So then the question is, where is our attention placed in this moment? So hopefully it is here. But of course, this is not just a one-dimensional answer of, okay, I'm just looking at the screen and I'm attending on Corey, I'm attentive on this group. There could be other poles of attention, thought forms, unresolved energies that are happening right now, consciously or unconsciously. There may be other things on your mind that you've been thinking about today, people, places, things. So then the practice of true seeking is to see, am I willing to relieve my attention upon all of these illusionary realities and come back to the true reality, which is the only thing in which I know for certain, in which is there is existence here, there is a knowing of love here, and that all of what I call my experience comes from this source. It comes from this perception. It comes from this essential nature, this loving awareness, this attention. So the entirety of our journey of awakening, no matter what modalities, what practices, what teachings, what teachers, what workshops, all of the above that we experience, naturally it is all to be of loving use for one to place their attention upon and further realize themselves. That's as simple as it gets. So the question is, if we find ourselves placing attention upon things in which are bringing dissonance, are bringing suffering, are feeling like they are not aligned for our path at this time, they are not actually supporting us on the journey. In the topic of COVID, I'm back. In the topic of COVID and this current situation we're in, there's endless ideas and perspectives and opinions and theories. And we could say that the majority of which are not necessarily of any true use to our moment-to-moment reality. It is a very small percentage of information that is useful to our moment-to-moment experience. And if we do not see this, then we very quickly get caught up in generalizations, assumptions, fears, all these desires, all kinds of things that come up that pull us away from the truth of this moment, the truth of our loving attention, which is the highest of all currency. And thus, by way of connecting that, just like a river, in a sense, has a life of its own. Nature has a life of its own. It grows by way of its own intelligence. This loving awareness that is beyond the conceptualizations of what we believe to be ourselves. It is the energy and intelligence in which moves all things. This begins to make way through one's life, purifying, revealing what is no longer useful, and moving in the direction of what's of true resonance to the heart. This is the way we navigate this time. This is the way we navigate all times. But we can reiterate it now because we're in the thick of it. At least some of us. I mean, I've been enjoying myself, but who knows where we're each at? We're all we're in the same waters, but we're in different boats. This is important. We're not all experiencing the same thing. Of course not. So just because it's a big collective party at the moment with all of this COVID and etc., we are not all experiencing it the same. So so this is what I have to share at the moment. I know there's some comments here. And if there's questions or anything, if you've lasted at least this message, I appreciate that, for tending to my triple air sign nature, who will like to ramble. But hopefully we can feel the presence here, because it's surely here and it's gifted us endless gifts. Stacy, thank you, Corey. 100% true. May we join hands and minds and rise together across the globe. I will add, maybe join hearts as well. May we join our hearts, hands, and minds all together and party and bask in the joy of God's source, because this is what we endlessly have the opportunity to do. So if you're still watching, maybe share this, because this is a powerful message. It's a very important message, especially on the practicalities that we're watching this on social media, and that endlessly our attention is pulled on social media through the plethora of topics and perspectives shared on our newsfeed, which I will implore each of you to really clean that up. Clean up your newsfeed, clean up your time and energy you place on scrolling and moving through certain perspectives, and really stay in tune with what wants to be created in this moment. It's very easy to get in the consumptive mode on social media. Even this, take the message, feel it, appreciate it, and go. We each have to be clear and clean within ourselves about how much we're consuming, how much we're offering, how much we're moving in the creative force. And sometimes listening is that creative energy. It's not just listening is consumptive, but we will know when that dial shifts, when we get in that consumptive mode, where we're looking to find relief from our pain, from the endless scrolling or more teachings or these things, instead of coming to be authentic with what's truly guiding us in this moment, what's necessary, coming back to our practices. I've given you a very simple but very effective practice that can be practiced all day. Keep coming back to the heart. Place attention upon that in which gives attention. So let's understand this. This is similar to the quote, I am that I am. I am that I am is the same statement as the golden rule, which is to treat another as I desire to be treated. But the only way in which one could know how to treat another is to know that this other is oneself. I am is the essence of being that recognizes the I am in all of life. So to place attention upon this I am presence, this sense of being that rests in the heart, sometimes just a little bit above the heart. And you can also use a breathing practice where we breathe into the center of the chest very slowly towards the back of the spine, and then you breathe out, let it go through the whole body, and just keep repeating that. That's if you need a really focal point of attention, but if not, sometimes we can just rest there and be with that and come back to that. Someone's complimenting my hair. Thank you. It's been a few years now. I'm enjoying it as well. Any form of platform for like-minded helps us feel not alone. It's true. This group is wonderful. I implore you all to add me as well on Facebook. I'm not always able to share. Like I mentioned at the beginning of today, I promised Matt I'd come in here and share some things. It's been a while. But I'm often sharing in my own platforms and communities, and I mean there's so many of these communities nowadays, so we're crossing over and we're finding our tribe and soul frequency and soul family, that also changes. You know, we may be in a certain period of time with a certain group of people, and then we may shift, and that's natural. That's a natural unfoldment. So if there's any questions in specific to your own personal experience or comments in regards to what we've shared here, then I'd be welcome to dive into that. I have some more time today. As I mentioned, you know, add me on Facebook. I'm really behind on my Facebook friend requests, but it's the nature of connecting with so many at this time. But you all have access to just watching and seeing everything that is being posted here on Facebook and Instagram. But it's nice just to be here with the Universal Awakening group. I'll leave it open just a little bit to see if there's any more questions. Share this video. If you're coming in late, I'd highly recommend to rewatch this. Again, we talked on the topic of attention being our currency. You know, and I was inspired by a woman I know, a great leader, who was speaking on the nature of currency being money, which we've come to know is actually us. We are the currency. The truth is we are the currency, and we have been, you know, dissuaded to believe that the true currency is somehow outside of us. Not just in money, but infinite forms of objectified desire that we believed to have the source of what we're looking for, but truly the source is within, and the fountain of youth is within, and all energy and all life, all love is within, and it comes from within, and it pours from within. Though what's important is we have to open the channels for the navigation of this outpouring. The outpouring is for it to be moved into the creativity of our day. It's not necessarily we need to share like this, or we need to be doing, you know, whatever we've thought in the mind is outpouring or sharing or service. The service of the creative force of God Source needs no person to observe it other than oneself. We can go into the forest and have a ball, have a playtime in the day. Be with your animal, be with a loved one, be with an art piece, you know, be with a flower, tend to your garden, be with the elements, be with life. This is the form of our creative source and our creative expression. And then many times it may take form of speaking it, sharing it, social media, creating something that can provide you with physical currency, because it's still useful and it will continue to be useful. It will just continue to change form. All right, so keep these things in mind and heart. So, wish I could show you my puppies inside. I'm still here, so if there's questions or comments, it looks like we're quite silent. Maybe share how you're feeling. I can feel all of you. I feel we're quite complete and present here, which is nice. You know, it's refreshing in times where there's much turbulence. So take that as a call to action and responsibility, that if you are holding a sense of ease and peace in this time, or at least, you know, a good amount of the time, then there's a certain responsibility that we share among collective beings, among our family, among those who look to us. Because just without us opening our mouth, the frequency of our being will express itself, and it will attract those who are in requirement of that charging station, you know. Because this is what we can be. Feeling a little exhausted, taking a day off meditation. Of course it is. We move through our rhythms and our cycles. Recognize that the less that we are seeking some over-the-top mountain state, you know, some rainbow, over the rainbow, grass is greener type of perspective, the less that we are seeking this, the less we will have difficulty when we are, you know, experiencing a bit of low, a bit of emotions, seeing some things on social media that tick us off, you know, feeling tired. We will be willing to rest with it, because the more there's an attachment to peak states, say some meditation, or you did some breath work, or, you know, you did some session with somebody and you're feeling amazing, and you're attaching yourself to this peak state from this place of fear that, what if I lose this? Then naturally, when you come to the tiredness, when you come to the low and all that, you have all this confusion, this resistance. You're like, what am I doing? All of that. So no matter where you are on that rhythm, it's a surrender to trusting in what the body is speaking. If we're tired, we go take a little rest. Maybe we go into nature, go take a shower, connect with the elements. You know, the elements will always, the elements are endlessly giving. They do not take. So it's a responsibility for us to remind ourselves that when the body is feeling depleted, it's generally pointing to the fact that the elements are off balance in some form, and that we can connect back to these elements in through our intuition, through simple practices. Up here I'm in Ottawa, Canada, so we take people on immersions into nature, and it's a vast day of exploration with these elements. But we are going to be putting a lot of this stuff online, so for those that are not local, just connect with me, and we're going to have a lot more practices available, and I'll share them in these groups too, about what is the direct path to well-being in a body, because we are in a body, and just because somebody's enlightened doesn't mean they're healthy. So if you'd like both, then we have to pay attention to both and respect the body, respect its needs, respect when it needs rest, respect when it needs sun, respect when it needs more water, respect when it needs a break from food. Fasting, that's a big one. Break from sex, break from adrenalized stimulation, social media, screens, activity, drama. There's so many ways in which the body speaks to us. Get our bare hands, our bare feet in the soil every day, touching the plants, communing with animals, and staying in the breath, slowing the breath down. Even in this moment, you may find your breathing is too shallow, too fast. You see? So these are all very simple ways we can come back to these elements and practice being ourselves, because we are nature. It's just some of us have forgotten. So hopefully that helps you, Christina. If there's any other questions or comments, etc., lay it on me. Say hello if you're not here, and share this video. You can share stuff in Universal Awakening, so please do share this. This is these are important topics. They're so simple, but we pass right by them. Conspiracies and all these things are so interesting, and believe me, I shared a lot about that recently. I did a 3-hour workshop recently on potentially every conspiracy you can think about in a very dialed-in fashion, so that we can come to the clarity of it and then move on. Don't need to pay too much attention to that type of thing. Thanks, I have all the questions. Well, questions are great. They lead us to truth. Many times when we have questions, the answers are right there with us. Sometimes we need a reflection, someone that can reflect back to us this knowing. But if we're asking questions, it's generally because we have the answer that's right there. It's just one side of the coin. So the coin has now arisen. It's like a coin. I'm getting the vision of like a coin in like a arcade. It's like popping up, or like a Mario game or something. Question: who is Q? I have no idea. What I do know is Q, the essence of Q, and the entire energy and consciousness of it, is fulfilling its purpose and agenda. It's making imbalanced conspiracy theorists more imbalanced, and it's making conspiracy deniers more imbalanced. Because the essence of Q comes with the premise that there's an over-the-rainbow image that we're all destined for in the next 2 days. Reminds me of 2012. This was running rampant in 2012. All these promises, all these ideas of this golden age that's coming to us. Everything's handling itself for us. We don't need to do a thing. And in essence, there's much truth to that, but not in the ideas in which are presented within the relative existence. To truly trust in the surrender of God's source is to dissolve all these ideas and come to the trust of allowing for life to move itself without your needing to control and manipulate it. So, in that sense, we could say that the truth of Q, of all these people being arrested and all these things coming to the surface so easily, well then yes, it's just happening. And look at that. As soon as we talk about it, look how many people sign on. So many people are triggered by conspiracy topics, both on the side of people in the spiritual scene denying topics of this nature, or overly attached to these topics. And this is a very key point, because in my experience, I viewed in beings who I view to be highly enlightened, teachers of mine, those who have gifted me the essence of non-dual consciousness and given me the doorway. And I've seen these beings have no idea about a lot of the conspiracy topics. And just now seeing the relevance and the importance of potentially exploring it, and now exploring it, now studying it. But many times they would dismiss it. They would be, in a sense, in their own resistance to it. And on the other end, I've also seen beings who are by no means in any sort of non-dual consciousness, rested in any state of knowing of their true self, or knowing even what authentic seeking is, and heavily involved in conspiracy-based topics. For me, I'd lend more on the first side as a greater foundation. If we focus upon the essence of our being and the true essence of where we come from and the source of ourselves, being made in the image of God's source, we will have the foundation to navigate conspiracy topics in a very practical and efficient manner, where we're not getting lost in distractions, not getting lost in fears, not getting lost in any of that. And that will be the foundation we rest upon and navigate. For me, I went the other route. I went into conspiracies in very early years, about a decade ago, and I was lost in a lot of distractions for a long time. I didn't know what true seeking was until many years after. So, this is an important thing. I'm not going to answer too many questions on that. I did a 3-hour workshop, 6 hours, 2 parts actually, on all of the above. So if you want access to that, just send me an email, or send me a message, or add me on Facebook. You guys can go look. But in the moment, it's not so important. I haven't watched this movie or video. I've watched enough, read enough. I'm not saying I know it all, but I certainly have found what I have needed to find in regards to these topics. And remember, just go take a long walk in the forest and dissolve all the ideas that we have of the fears and the cabal and this and that, and see what's actually present. Coming back to the focus of today, our attention is our currency. Where we place our attention is ultimately the co-created reality we'll move into. Timelines are not set in stone. Always remember this. There's no positive or negative timeline set in stone. This is co-created moment to moment by collective consciousness, by individual choice. And even if there was an entire world that completely collapsed, we still have our individual choice as to where we're headed and where we'd like to go within the internal co-creation. So never get caught up in too much of that. Any idea why I see numbers? I mean, what does it mean to you? What does it feel like to you? This is what's more important. It's like having a dream. It's like having a message from someone at a certain time. It's like anything. A synchronistic moment can be both a positive guidance or a distorted guidance. It is still a product of mind. So we have to learn to be responsible in reading the energies properly while not getting attached in it. This is engaged attachment. We are engaged in the world but not of it. We are engaged in the movements of synchronistic moments and dreams and all kinds, yet we are detached. This is very important because it's very easy to get caught up in thinking that every time a synchronicity there must be some positive thing. Sure, but it's truly neutral. And there are distortions with synchronicity where your mind can present you with many things that seem like they're lining up with something, but lining you up in a direction which isn't necessarily of beneficial nature. So when we are in a neutral viewpoint, when we are connecting to our truth, when we are connecting to the body first and foremost, that's why I ask you first, how do you feel when you see these numbers? What is happening in your reality? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you perceiving when things arise? That's what's more important. Naturally, I can say that yes, at times these numbers may be useful, and other times they may be not, just like a dream. You could have a dream that gives you a clear insight on something that you've been looking for, and you could have another dream that means absolutely nothing to you. It looks, at least in that moment. So we have to navigate with ourselves, first and foremost, and trust what is the inclination that you feel with the specific thing, without getting too attached. And I can't necessarily always answer these questions so accurately without getting a clear picture. That's why I do charts when I do one-on-one sessions with human design, because charts are so helpful in understanding the specific dynamics that you may experience in your body versus somebody else, and how that may be navigated, right? But what's important to understand is that at the core, synchronistic messages or repeating energies are presenting you messages. They're presenting you specific reminders that in simplicity they're reporting back to you saying, everywhere you go, there you are. So whatever gunk, whatever truth, whatever joy and all the above that you're holding, wherever you go, it is presenting itself to you. So whatever you're running from is coming with you. Whatever you're running towards is coming with you. It's all there. And at the core, whatever you're rested in as source, as loving source, will naturally present itself. You see? So when we rest in this perception, we'll be mindful of what's being spoken, because everything in the mirror is being spoken. It's speaking something. But it is up to us to decipher what that message is. Right? So it's exciting initially, seeing these repeating energies and seeing that, well, there must be something occurring. There must be an opening of consciousness because I was not aware of this before. And so now the truth and the reminder is that synchronicity has always been, always will, and always has, or at least always is now, arising, happening. So from this perception, it doesn't matter where we go, where we are, synchronistic moments are going to be arising. But it is not just one simple answer that just handles everything. There is a real complexity to understanding the synchronistic messages you're receiving and the discipline of discernment to read, to hear, to listen. Right? So the safety net truly is to not draw too many conclusions, not act out emotionally on anything, just rest in the ease of what's being perceived. Just rest in the ease of what's revealing itself. And you'll get your message. You'll know what it means in the right time. So maybe a couple more questions, comments, and then I will sign off. Thank you for messaging and saying, sharing these things, because I'm sure so many are receiving that. Christina, it's so hard. Well, we don't need to make it hard. We make it more difficult by trying too hard to understand it. So if we trust in what is present, the natural inclinations, the natural resonance, the natural pull, the natural ideas that come, and we're not overly trusting in anything, nor are we denying anything. Just allowing. This takes time. The difficulty is more in the patience. The difficulty is more in the actual application. It's easy to get a reading, and I can do that. You can set a time. But my readings are different because I'm not here to tell you so much the messages that you're already receiving for yourself. If anything, there'll be some sort of confirmation, but it's more so to give you the mechanics on how to navigate that so that you have the tools to navigate that on your own. Right? But you're in a good place, Christina, so no need to worry. So, last few calls, questions or comments. If you're just coming in, I'd recommend to, rewatch this, because there's a lot of juice that was squeezed. And if you have enjoyed this, then do share this, because it's likely many others can benefit. Is it about eliminating fear or handling fear? Well, let's get really practical with this. Fear on the fundamental level in this body is a feeling. Right? We feel this in the body. We feel fear in the body. So if we feel fear in the body, then we have to give ourselves the ability to actually feel that as a first and foremost practice, because the majority of the time, if we do not understand fear, do not understand our relationship with fear, we just haven't felt it enough. Right? So to navigate the experience of fear, it's more a process of actually experiencing the feeling of what fear is and where in the body it arises, because it tells a story. I've developed an energy healing method over the past 8 years that has worked wonders for me and everyone I work with. And it's a simple practice of observing and bringing the attention into the charges within the body that we could say are fear, because they're uncomfortable, and they bring a plethora of ideas and thoughts with them, and giving our time and attention to them in a loving and compassionate way. Just like if a little child came to you crying, it's not like they want advice. They're not wanting some like theory. They're just wanting to be held. They're wanting to be observed. They're wanting to be compassionately taken care of. So this is what the charges of fear in the body also want. And the more attention that you bring to that consciously, by moving your attention, moving your energy into those areas of the body, wherever that is and wherever that's arising, even if it's in this moment or at any other point, and see what happens. See what happens. Because it's generally quite a positive outcome when we do this, even though initially it's quite daunting, and it, in a sense, may exacerbate the feeling of fear. It may get even more intense. It may get even more charged. So this is the practice that I'm gifting you here, and I would implore you each to practice this if you're not already doing this, because just like the little child who's afraid of what's underneath the bed because it's dark, and then after you sit with them and you console them and all that, then you ask, oh, do you want to actually look and see if there's anything under the bed? And then the child's like, oh, okay, maybe. And then we go and we look under the bed, and oh, all of a sudden you see what's actually there, and there's nothing there. Sometimes there actually is, because children are very in tune with multi-dimensional realms, so a lot of times children's fears about the boogeyman were true. But that's besides the point. We understand what I'm getting at. So we can navigate our fears when we've actually felt them and we've come in contact with them, which is not necessarily an outer thing. It's very much a navigation in the body. It's a very practical experience. This is not some woo-woo practice or some big theory. It's a very embodied practice of moving your attention directly into the charges and energies of your body that elicit or feel fearful, and rest there for basically as long as you need. And a lot of times it's longer than you may think, but surprisingly it may be faster than, well, it's definitely faster than avoiding it for years or going to like psychotherapy for 10 years and not really getting anywhere or whatever. Not to generalize, but it's commonly the case. Does anyone feel like they need to be doing something right now? Yes. The ultimate doing is to realize your God nature. It's to realize the source of who you are, to realize the source of where all moments come from, to realize your co-creative power, to realize that through your attention you create worlds, to realize your innate knowing and wisdom that gives you the awareness in each moment of what is required of you in the most simple of ways. When we ask this question, what is my purpose, what should I be doing, all of these things, many times the mind goes into some glamorous picture, some huge image about all this gigantic reality that you should or could or would have been reliving. When in the simplest of moments, in the most basic of things, the most mundane of situations, we can implore and open up to the movements of God's source, the movements of our true nature. So never forget this, because it's this foundation in which we'll navigate potential bigger actions. But there's no bigger or smaller action, because every big outcome comes from small steps. A moment-to-moment unfolding. So, I'll leave it there. I feel like we're going to wrap this up, as I mentioned. Please, you can add me. If there's any more comments or questions that come after this, I'll see if I can circle back to it. But, I'm around. I'm posting somewhat often in this group, and then I will, continue to do some lives over the course of the next coming weeks. But it's been nice to be here with all of you. More people asking about nat numbers. Just go back and read what I said. You can also study numerology and get a more deeper understanding sometimes as to what some messages mean. But I'll tell you, a lot of times that's distracting, at least in my journey. It's important to appreciate everything, though, everything that you're perceiving. Remember, if we believe that seeing a number sequence is more important than looking at the flower, or seeing some dream in our mind is more important than observing, the sunrise in the morning, then there's given much opportunity for delusion. So instead, see if we can practice to see all things equally, with the same loving compassion. It's very daunting. But everything in our experience, see if we can move our attention. It's not forcibly looking at everything and bringing our love and gratitude, because that's unnatural, although that can be a practice. It's more so allowing for the attention to naturally rest itself on what it naturally wants to move to, and giving way for the loving attention and awareness to move into that. So here's a third practice for today. 3 practices I've given you today. Practice them as much as you can, whatever resonates most. And we'll connect soon. Deep love to all of you. See you soon.